Hello, everybody. It's me, your good friend Sparky, and welcome back to my short series of vlogs detailing my adventures in Japan. If you have not watched the first two vlogs, please do. They talk about my time staying in Tokyo and when I arrived in Kazuno. And this vlog in particular is going to be about the last 5 days I was in the country. And those last 5 days center around two specific events. I do want to apologize in advance about my video footage here coming across as a little shaky and fuzzy in places. Feel free to just listen to the relaxing sounds of my voice rather than watch the video if you are so inclined, because apparently my phone's camera does not like to function very well in low light conditions. I don't know, it's just got like a weird, fuzzy, shaky look to it from when I was walking around, which I guess really isn't that big of a deal, but it still bugs me when stuff like that happens. But that's besides the point. The point is that this particular vlog, talking about my time in Kazuno, starts off with a local festival called Hanawa Bayashi. Yes, a real Japanese festival that my nerdy brain was kind of flipping out over a little bit actually being there. Because, you know, in all of your favorite anime and manga, you have the festival arc, where everyone is at the different booths and playing, like, the goldfish scooping games and things like that. It's got a special kind of feel to it that's different from your average American fairgrounds. And I actually got to be there and actually partake in a festival. And yes, they did have all of the same booths that you recently saw in your favorite anime. I didn't really play any of the games or anything like that, but just being there and getting to walk around everywhere was quite the treat, honestly. The biggest draw of Hanawa Bayashi, though, was definitely these floats that they parade around town. And yes, they actually do walk these around the town. Though we didn't actually really get to see them moving around too much. We got to them when they were kind of parking them at the local train station. As it was described to me, the different floats represent the different neighborhoods in Hanawa, which is a town within the city of Kazuno. And in each of the floats, they've got different performers and musicians, and they're all lit up, and it was just really quite the sight to behold. I really enjoyed being there, just in general. It's just one of those things that you can only experience authentically in the country of origin, I feel. Like I said, it's a different feeling of going to like an American fairground or something like that. You've got the food, you've got the booths and things, but at the same time, it's definitely a different feeling. Plus, you won't see people walking around in kimonos at your local fairground. It was really funny, too, getting to walk around and see all the different people around, because, of course, when you're at, like, a local festival or something like that, you're gonna bump into people you know, or at least people my sister knew, because, you know, I had never really been there before. So I got to get introduced to several people that she knew and worked with, including some of her students that she teaches. And all of the students kind of had the same reaction to seeing me, the same kind of like, whoa reaction. I admittedly didn't get, like, stared at as much as I thought I would, being, like, a 6'4" American tourist in Japan. But when you're up close to someone and getting introduced to them, they tend to take in, how large you are, and how different you are to the average person that they might see on a daily basis. And if any of her students happen to be listening to this by any chance, I do hope that your studies are going well. It was a pleasure meeting you and everyone there, and I had a lot of fun during my stay. Now, Hanawa Bayashi as a festival is meant to last for 2 days, but unfortunately on the following day, some pretty heavy rains rolled in, and our planned venture out to day 2 of the festival unfortunately did not happen because they canceled the rest of it. A bit of an abrupt bummer end to the festivities, of course, because apparently they typically wouldn't cancel it, according to what I was told, but yeah, the rains came in and were particularly aggressive. So a festival that was meant to last for 2 days ended up only lasting for like 1.5, technically, and we did not get a chance to go back. So day 11, following day 10, the day of the festival, ended up being just kind of a hanging out, relaxing sort of day around my sister's apartment, as well as day 12. I was quickly coming up to the end of my adventures in Japan, and we had more or less run through the list of things that we had planned on and set out on to do. But on day 13, we did end up going out for one more adventure. After meeting up with a friend and coworker of my sister's, we got lunch at a local soba place and then went off to the local copper mine. Not for a day of hard labor, mind you, but for a tour around the mine itself. Though it was less of a tour and more of us just kind of buying a ticket and walking in ourselves. The Osarizawa mine in Kazuno City is one of the largest mining sites in Japan, with 1,300 years of history behind it. Now, if you've happened to watch any of my videos before and remember this by any chance, I do kind of have a thing for underground exploration in games. Cavern exploring and spelunking and stuff like that really kind of speaks to me. I really enjoy it for whatever reason. So getting to wander around an actual mine, an actual historical mine, was kind of freaking cool to me. There were a couple different paths that you could take throughout the tour. Of course, there were areas that were barred off for no entrance because they were probably a little too dangerous for casual exploration, but you honestly did get to wander around and explore a lot of the mine, entirely on foot. So getting the full experience out of your little touring adventure, it is quite the walk, but one that I actually very thoroughly enjoyed. For one, the mine is constantly at a nice, cool temperature, and I don't remember if I've mentioned this or not, but Japan, especially the Tokyo era, was very, very warm for the most part while I was staying there. Even more warm than I'm usually used to in the summer, to the point where it was so hot and humid, I could literally feel myself dripping sweat sometimes. As gross as that sounds, but it is the truth. So getting to spend a day in a naturally air-conditioned mine, yeah, it was quite enjoyable actually. But getting out of the heat was only really one of the benefits because it was just kind of fascinating to be there. They had a lot of different areas set up to kind of show off what daily life in the mine was like. People would actually stay down there and live down there and eat down there, and it's just really fascinating. Like I said, there was over 1,000 years of history to this mine, and it was obviously very central to the daily lives of people living around it, I'm sure. That sort of place would create a lot of work and jobs, and yeah, it was kind of crazy just being able to learn about all that. Though admittedly, seeing all of the different mannequins that they set up to represent people working in the mine was a little unnerving at points. Is the kind of thing where they almost looked completely real from a short distance away, and it's one of those things that you would expect out of a horror movie where the mannequins would suddenly start moving, or at night the mine would come to life and the mannequins would go back to their job as if it were completely normal. And Right, yeah. I had tried not to think about it like that a little too much, but every time I saw one of those mannequins around the corner, it was a little unnerving. But for real, getting to be there and just getting to hang out and get a bit of a history lesson along the way, I'm fascinated by that underground exploration. I'm always fascinated by like local and country history too. So it was kind of a double whammy for me, and even though wandering around a unmanned mine doesn't seem too interesting to some, I'm sure, I very, very thoroughly enjoyed myself. And not to mention that later on in the day, we also got to go out and do a little karaoke. It was at a local place that my sister frequents, and the owners were super nice. They let us stay and do a couple songs, even though they had a party coming in that kind of reserved the entire space. We unfortunately couldn't stay very long, but it was still just kind of a fun little cap to the entire adventure in Japan. And that being said, that's kind of where the adventure comes to an end. Day 14 was the day that I had my flight back to the States. So I essentially spent the entire day traveling back home. It started off with a bus ride back to the bullet train. I said goodbye to my sister at the station. I did end up getting quite weepy having to leave, which was super embarrassing, but, you know, I'm an emotional kind of guy. I had a 2-hour bullet train ride back to Tokyo, several smaller train rides back to the airport, about an hour or so wait for my flight to start boarding, and then the 12-hour flight back home to the United States, where I landed in Chicago, had to wait a little bit for my connecting flight, then we ended up taking another couple hours on a plane back to New York, where I met my parents at the airport, and my long, crazy 2-week journey in Japan finally officially came to an end. I was glad to be home, of course, because after a long trip like that, you're always missing your own bed. But I was also quite sad to have to leave. This was my very first big overseas trip, and part of me really did not want it to end. Japan is a fascinating place to explore and be in. Especially when you're completely used to, like, an American way of life. I think I had described it before, but part of me did not really take in and get the sense of exactly how far I traveled while I was there, because you can't really tell how quickly you're moving while you're inside the plane. But in reality, I traveled halfway across the world, and traveled halfway across the world back in the manner of 2 weeks. And it's still almost bizarrely fascinating to me exactly how that happened and how I managed to pull that off. Because without my sister staying over there, I don't think I ever would have had the nerve to make this trip by myself. Maybe if it was a planned trip with friends, but me flying solo all the way to the other side of the planet, it was not something that I necessarily considered myself capable of doing. And yet, I've done it. I have the footage to prove it, the stories to tell. And of course, I would love to go back someday as well. Maybe this time I would like to go with friends at some point. I feel like that would definitely make it out to be a bit of a different experience. Getting to share that experience with someone too would of course be kind of incredible. But yes, the tale of Sparky's trip to Japan had to come to a close eventually, and come to a close it did. I had to come back home to my responsibilities and my job, and of course back to you, lovely people, so I could recount the tale to you. Maybe someday I'll have more travel stories to tell. I certainly hope so. Because I'd definitely like this to not be a one-time only thing. Until then, though, thank you so much for listening to me ramble on about my adventures. If you have not watched the other parts of the vlog yet, detailing my arrival and middays in Japan, please do. And until the next adventure, this is your good friend Sparky signing off for now, and I'll catch you later.